And we are live here on Plus One EXP's Roll for Content channel. My name is Tony Vicinda. I'm Chief Alchemist here at Plus One EXP. I also just reset all my microphone settings. So if you're out there watching right now and want to let me know how it sounds to you, because man, even though it's going to a couple different places, they all sound a little bit different. But that said, we are here with this month's episode of Now You've Zine It, which has quickly become kind of a fan favorite in our new interview series. It is a three-way interview where we sit down with two different creators and invite them to explore and the intersections, disconnections, and design conversations that emerge when we hold their games up kind of in parallel with each other. Today, we've got somebody who's become really familiar here on stream. It's been great to have Artie on for a lot of things, but super excited to have you here to talk about Dying of the Light. You want to tell people a little bit about who you are, what you do, and give us the elevator pitch for Dying of the Light.
Totally. Hi, everyone. My name is Arthur Wells. Everyone calls me Artie or Werewolf. That's where is in the question, wolf is in the animal. And I am a game designer and actual play performer. You can find me here on this channel, but also Timbo the Wizard, his Twitch and YouTube is my main group that I play with. And I am here to talk about my game, Dying of the Light. Let me scroll to my elevator pitch. Okay. Dying of the Light is a GM-less game for 1 to 4 players, and players collectively assume the role of a city on a single night. They pull cards from a deck of standard playing cards, and these provide questions that prompt you to describe the beautiful and melancholic parts of the night. When you answer these questions, you also get tokens that you can spend to do different actions like introducing locations, people, and creating a moment of light, which is really the sort of core bit of the game, is these moments of light, of connection between two people. It's the kind of thing I mentioned in the book. It's like kids waiting at an airport for their parent who's getting home on a red-eye flight, or a sushi chef leaving out a bunch of kind of fish they would be getting rid of for some alley cats. Just those little bits of connection that you can find between each other and the city you live in.
Awesome. And I have been calling this stream up being up all night because both of these games take place kind of in the evening, overnight, twilight, or deal with just not getting enough sleep, probably. So let's kick things over to Nada. Do you want to tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and tell us about Eighth Day of the Week?
Absolutely. Thank you, Tony. I also go by Amir, interchangeable, Nada or Amir. Um, and I have they, she pronouns. And my game, Eighth Day of the Week, is maybe a little more streamlined, just requires one D6 and something to journal on. It's a solo journaling TTRPG about essentially staying awake. The base premise is staying awake to unlock an eighth day of the week, which is very clear once you get in. But after getting into it, there are a lot more heady, abstract concepts being thrown at you about what it takes to stay up for that long. Why would you stay up for that long? Um, it is not personally a game that I designed to necessarily be fun, because I think some introspection that these solo journaling games provide are not necessarily fun, but they're revealing. But getting into maybe like the surreal psychological aspects of sleep deprivation and how that could come across in the span of 7 days or more. There's a possibility to mess with time a bit. I actually forgot if we could curse.
You can. It's
I'm
fine.
assuming it's fine.
It's
Could fuck
totally
with
fine
time a
on our
bit.
end.
Okay, awesome. Uh, and so there's a possibility for more or less time where you can either choose to get sleep debt, essentially the only currency that matters, to get to the end if you can, and find out what it costs in the mechanical sense and the spiritual sense. and however the debt manifests itself, which you can decide when you create the character. Um,
Awesome. My softball question to get us rolling before I'll hand things over. I think we'll start with Amir today. Like, so we'll, after we do our softball question, we'll hand the interview over to you to ask Artie your first question.
okay.
The first thing I want to know is, as a creator, right? Lots of times people try to figure out how to manage their creative lives. Are you the kind of person who stays up late working on things, or are there other ways that you time manage to try to create extra margins? So, I'm here, since you're going to ask the first question, we'll have Artie answer this one first, have you answer, and then dive right into it. So, Artie, how do you deal with that creative impulse? How do you seize it? How do you manage it?
I am someone that when I'm working on a game, I'm thinking about it all the time. I find something, some kind of problem that I'm thinking about, and I'm just kind of turning it over in my head a little bit. Like, it's that meme of like I turn it in my head like an apple. It really is that though. Like, I if I'm stuck on something, it just kind of flows into my everyday life that I'm doing work, Excel spreadsheets, whatever, and it pops into my brain. And and eventually I'll hit a point where it's like I've thought about this from every possible angle. I'm just going to sit down for 30 minutes and start writing and see what happens. And so there'll be long stints where I don't actually put any text down because it's just like I have this weird Rubik's cube in my head that as I'm turning it, I find out, oh, there's actually another one inside of it. And so it's like I'll go long periods without writing, and then like an entire Saturday, I'm just devoted to that's what I'm doing today. I don't I don't know if it's sustainable, but it's definitely what I do. So
Love it. Yeah, I don't think, I think there's elements of everybody's creative process that are not necessarily sustainable. So it's great to
sure.
hear. Also, shout out to the layout artist for both of these games who's in chat right now, Luna, who we love getting to work with on a lot of the Zine Club projects that we put out and a lot of things we do here at Plus One. Is the visual designer of both of these books. So as we're going through and you're catching sight of things that are especially beautiful, let us know in the chat that you appreciate it, so that Luna sees that. I will say, Eighth Day we had Strega do the cover for, but the visual design here in both of these games is absolutely stunning. So let's keep on going though. Nada, tell us a little bit about tell us how you manage that creative process. Are you the kind of person who stays up late, burns the oil? Is this a self-reflective game, or is there another way you manage it?
So in I think the early stages of me trying to figure out what kind of writer I wanted to be, I like doing a lot of um, creative writing in my childhood, short stories and things like that. And my best ideas would inevitably come at night because I felt like it was the most peaceful time. Sleep deprivation sort of became like an unfortunate effect of having like trying to live a very packed teenage life and then have some time for myself, where I could maybe do something self-indulgent for nobody else. And that has sort of bled over into my adult life, except I cannot function without less than 5, 6 hours without becoming a totally different evil person. So I can't do that anymore. So interestingly, this game sort of like very early on made me think like, would I want to play this? Would I want to do this sort of thing? And my answer, even though I have tested my game, I've played my game, is maybe not, because the creative like inspiration can sort of get me in flashes, and I can maybe go over it more later. But like the thing that came to me fully formed in the middle of the night was just like the title of the game because it all felt very self-contained from there. Like there's a very easy way to avoid scope creep and that kind of thing. Just from feeling like, oh, this is the title that says everything like about the game and what you're trying to do, like the goal and the possible tone and all that. But a lot of the work that I consider to be like more mechanical and like the actual writing of it, less of the ideation, uh, I try to just do it at any time of the day. Like whenever I have energy because this is my first imprint game, my only one so far, and I consider that to be a success because it has been my only goal as a designer is to publish one thing, and
You did it.
it would be so bad if I decided like let's turn our wheels into the mud and crash out after this one project, this one zine. So I try to keep it to waking hours.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I mean, if you ever unlock the 8th day of the week, you do have to let us know. You have to come back,
Obviously,
and then
that's where the
start
second
jamming for
edition
the
needs
9th
to.
day if we can. But Amir, why don't you take it away? Go ahead and ask Arthur the first question that came to you while you were kind of exploring Dying of the Light.
Okay. I had a few. I struggle to think of an order. What I like about the prompts and getting to, I think, the meat of the game is that tonally there are very clear um, mood differences between the first and second prompt because you get to, as you can see from all of the suits, you get to choose one of two prompts. Um, uh, I find that at least 50% of these prompts are somewhat like charged with something bad might happen, there's like danger around the corner potentially. With the question being framed as to like how do you react? What do you think of this? What do the denizens do? And so, whether this was through you or friends or playtesters figuring that out, how do you think that? Do you think that influenced the tone of the game? And if so, how do you think that does for people who play it?
Sure. It's actually really funny. Writing the Oracle was like the bulk of I need to expend like all of the creative energy here. And then I can go back and write all the basic rules. But it's like I know that this is the mechanic that I'm working with, and it's the thing that I'm gonna need to like these prompts need to hit. And so it was really like that was almost the kind of the first section I worked on. And I I kind of had two things going into them that I were kind of core to how I designed them, which was I want each card, the prompts to, in one way or another, be thematically linked to each other, maybe viewing a similar situation from a different angle. And I also wanted to do one. I did think like I want to do one that's more of a hard pitch and one that's a little bit more of a softball, because I think a big part of what I wanted to do with this game was put a lot of power to the players in terms of like you get to choose your city and what that city looks like. You get to choose the people that you're filling it with. And one thing that is out of their control is like these prompts writ large do get harder as the night goes on, but you can kind of self-regulate within your group of like if you're people who are looking for a little bit of a lighter experience, you can really like glide through some of the easier prompts and still have a fulfilling experience. Or it's like you could have a group who decides to go for the really like challenging, hard hitting things. The first question is a really good example. Like the Ace of Hearts starts with, either a shop is opening for the first time and we get to meet the person who's kind of having this, or it's closing for the night for the first time, and it's like this really joyous moment where it's like they're in a total honeymoon phase. But the other side of that is a shop that's closing for the very last time, and you're hoping for a moment of light to kind of soften that blow. And the thing is, it's like I wanted that first question to be so impactful so that it tells you like the entire time you're playing this game, it's up to you to choose the experience you want. And actually, in the first edition of the game that I released back on Itch, there are cards that only have one prompt. And that was something that I changed in the second edition because it was like, although I liked what it was kind of doing with in terms of breaking the form I had set for myself, the design principle was like the player choice being a driving motivator.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And a wonderful answer.
All right, Artie, it's your turn.
Totally. Honestly, I'm gonna piggyback off of one of my questions. Kind of piggybacks off of something Tony said. We both got to work with Luna, and we have ended up with like both cool layouts, but I think different. And it feels like there's maybe a bit of a retro vibe to both of ours because like I was going for like Rezo prints and like stuff written in notebooks, and it's like yours kind of has an like late 90s early 2000s GeoCity kind of computer vibe. Was there something behind that it like that was kind of the inspiration calling to you, or what was the thought behind that?
No, that's great because I was also gonna piggyback because obviously, like, can't help but notice that Luna's a master catalyst between all of these projects here. But honestly, I remember like there were a lot of firsts for me coming into the design process in which I understood that like aesthetically, I didn't mind too much about what was ornamenting the text, um, except I gave Luna the basic themes and also the cats, I think, sheet. So it had like the concept, the aim, the tone, some. I think people in Zine Club tend to give them to Wes, and it's also something that people do to pitch their APs. I found it really helpful, and if I'm misremembering that, Luna could say so also. Um, but I basically went through a lot of ge- like geometric and surreal art that I could find on public domain sites, and I sort of pitched it to her after giving her a sense of like this is what the game is like. I'm expecting some form breakdown in the middle and the end. Thank you, Luna. Uh, so I did my best to give her as much free reign in that realm, and I think the middle days where there's themes of cyber like cyber stalking slash possible harassment through the phone are the ones that like have the most clear time and place because I tried the thing about solo journaling games is that there is an expectation to like universalize yourself and to relate to the protagonist, and I tried to leave it very time and place ambivalent so that you could do anything. But those, I think those feelings of being sort of addicted to, not addicted, but dependent on tech in that way came through the best in what I could describe as, well, what you said, like the Y2K sort of aesthetic, as well as I would call it glitchcore, but I also know that's a musical subgenre and
Sure.
could say that I was inspired by that, but that's not what I'm trying to say. I think you understand what I'm saying, though.
There is a weird, fun thing that y'all don't know, but the glitchcore aesthetic was also really funny because at one point, the printers who we don't work with anymore, that particular print outfit for Dying of the Light, sent me the like PDF preview, and I was like looking through it and I was like, oh, I remember this being glitchcore, but this is way weirder than I remember it being. And they had just stretched things weirdly into all kinds of different
Oh, that's so
dimensions.
funny.
But it took me like 3 pages before I was like, this is not right at all, and had to be like, hey, y'all messed this up. They did fix it,
Oh,
but it like it would have been easy to miss had I not been paying slightly more attention on the first few pages. The later part of the book was all fine, but the first 3 or 4 pages were additionally glitch cored out on the original print.
Oh, got to the first 3, like, what an interesting design choice, and then closed it. It's like, well, surely that was intentional. No. It's very funny.
Nada, do you have another question?
I do indeed. Because I'd like to break out of the perpetual beginner sort of mentality. I'm pretty curious as to how the general developmental process went, mostly in terms of order of things, and also what came first is my burning initial question.
Sure. So this game originally, I think it was 2021, was a part of the second Caltrop Core game jam. I did the first one with a little game. It's a keepsake game called the Mystic Pizza Oracle. And it's all about sharing memories with your friends, and at the end of it you order a pizza based off all the memories you shared. And the second time that Lex Bobro did a Caltrop Core jam, I was like, I really want to push myself to make like a game because the first one is really more of just kind of a like sit around and talk with your friends kind of vaguely about sharing memories. This one is much more, I think, structured, and like I mentioned, the Night Oracle was like a huge bulk of starting to establish the tone of the game. And I remember when I first started writing, I was like, okay, so each phase of the night is going to be assigned this card suit for this reason. And then I went one ace through king, and I gave a like on all the 4s I want it to be about, or all the 2s I want to be about a relationship. And I'll be honest, on the final edition, I don't know if I stuck with that, but like thematically, I linked each of them to each other so that I knew, like, okay, here I'm going to need to do one about a community or someone who's alone. And there was a lot of kind of theory happening in there with like numerology, because I'm very into Alejandro Jodorowsky's The Way of the Tarot. It's like the Bible for reading tarot. It's a huge book. It's over 1,000 pages, and the writing is tiny. But I had recently reread it, and there was all this stuff on numerology, and so that was like a big part of writing the Oracle. But first of all, I decided I wanted to do a playing card deck instead of a tarot deck, because it's like playing cards are a little more accessible for people. And also, like, if I eventually strayed away from the whole numerology thing, no one would be like, well, why is this card these props and that kind of thing. And so, like I said, the bulk of writing started with that Oracle, and then it was like, I need to establish in my brain, I know what I want the game experience to be, but I need to actually establish what that is going to be. Because a big inspiration for this game is Avery Alder's The Quiet Year, and by extension, The Deep Forest by Mark Diaz Truman. And you can definitely see, especially with the Oracle, kind of the fingerprints there, but the actual kind of turn order is definitely different. And so in my brain, it's like, I had to go, what are all these assumptions that I'm making about the game that I would have to explain to someone else in order to teach them this? And part of that is like selecting a city. Part of that is, what are the actual actions and how do they mechanically work? And the Caltrop core is part of the moment of light move, where you're rolling those d4s, and you could try to create a moment of light and fail spectacularly, or kind of have a mixed success or a complete success. And so it kind of came in phases where it's, I started with my big idea of what's the driving force behind the game. And then it's like, what are all the things I have to explain to make this playable? And I would say I had about 3 years of playtesting before like I got picked up for Zine.Club. And I wasn't playtesting that entire time, to be so clear. I've been working on other projects, but it was one of those things that every once in a while I would return to it, and I would get notes from people who had played it. And I think playtesting it before doing the second edition and like giving it that space to breathe was really good, because it was like, this was a game that, and still is, it's like, this is a game that feels deeply written in my own voice, and like it's so much about kind of how I view the world. But it wasn't quite there in the first edition, partially because I wrote it in like less than a month and I had to get submitted for a game jam. But there were all these things that it's like I really had to wrestle with feedback I was getting from people, that it's like, sometimes you want to make a really strong artistic statement, and so like an example is the game originally ended with pulling the king of diamonds, and that's the absolute end of the game. And I was getting feedback from people that it's like, and it's like I wanted that, because the game is about nighttime. It's not about the day we're moving into, it's about the night. So it's like, as soon as the sun rises, we move on. But I kept getting feedback that people were like, I got to the end of the night and I still had tokens left, but the game just kind of ended. And I was like, I wrestled with it for the longest time, because it's like, I believe in my artist's statement. This is a game about the night. And I think having to like take that step and take that feedback and kind of adjust the very end of the game, where like you can try one more time to make a moment of light, that was like, that's that compromise. And I think that's like a big part of getting this game to where it was now, was just kind of like, how am I moving this game to become better, more accessible to more people, a better experience, but still like keep the heart of the thing. And it turns out it's just like a bunch of little things. It's writing things that you totally forgot about. Like, I forgot to mention in the original edition, you need d4s, which by the time you get to the point where you're explaining how to do the moment of light move, you're like, oh, apparently I have to go find d4s. So I think that's it. It's like, it was all very incremental, because it was like, it was a sprint out of the gate, and then I just spent a lot of time refining it and fixing little things. And I think that was really how I got to where I was today, was just like a lot of little fixes. I'll be honest, I think a lot of games that people publish on itch, that it's like their first draft of the game, are, there's so much really good solid stuff in the middle, and it's like, with just like a little bit more refining, everyone should do more second editions. And I know that Wes Franks is a very big proponent of this, and I say it too. Everyone should do more second editions. Why not? What is it going to kill you to edit some texts and maybe move some things around? I just got lucky that I got to do it with Zine.Club.
Yeah, we have some creators who really hem and haw about like, well, once my game's printed out, we can't change anything. And I'm like, we're going to print 200 to 500 copies of your game and hopefully sell them all. Like, once that's done, if there's things we want to change, we can change them for the next. We don't even have to do a second edition. We can just do, hey, here's the new version. Here's the new digital for everybody. Here's some things that we added on a little errata page, and we're good to go. Like, it's, yeah, I mean, iteration is one of the best parts about RPG design.
Absolutely.
Okay, I have a question for you.
Okay.
So something that I saw reflected in our games was, we both referenced a specific writer. Mine was at the beginning, where I'm talking about Kate DiCamillo, and yours is at the end, talking about the philosopher Kierkegaard.
Mm-hmm.
And I have some thoughts about why, but I love that you waited until the very end to kind of present that in your game. But I'm curious, like, what was your thought? I like including it at all, but also like, why did you save it for that last like punch? What was the thought there?
So, firstly, love that you put it in the beginning of your game because I think the whole concept of the moment of light is so easily lifted by the very beautiful quote from the author of The Tale of Despereaux, whose name for some reason escapes me. My real answer to that question is that during that time in development, I was in one of my last undergraduate general electives. I was taking a philosophy class. I think it was the philosophy of ethics was the title of the class, but I was reading both Nietzsche and Kierkegaard and hearing, I think, what my professor said, because there was recently a review put out on my game today, actually, that says that it's not clear as to where the specific quotes are picked out, is that I specifically made an interpolation, not an interpolation. I elaborated on what I thought of these concepts that they were trying to pull about debt, the morality of being someone who lends someone something without necessarily thinking like they'll be able to pay it back, which is a large, like, it's a fulcrum of the economy that kind of capitalizes on people not being able to pay for things. But also, like, what psychologically would drive someone to do that, which is the punishment aspect, which I try to drive in the beginning of this game by assigning a debtor, which can be like a ghost, it can be like a grim reaper, it can be a person, it can be defined by you once you get to the end, and I make that very clear that the eighth day is about defining who the debtor is, specifically to elaborate on how much debt you accrue throughout the 8 days, because there's a possibility that you get really lucky or you re-roll some good numbers that you don't get a lot. And the fear of the debt in the player's mind can get smaller over time than it otherwise would be if your debt collector was someone who would like break your kneecaps or send you to purgatory. Theoretically, that could also just happen if you roll bad and if you have enough debt that sort of forces you to outer roll to the end of the game. um, I include Kierkegaard and Nietzsche. Sorry about that. These are names that I've only read and I've never really said them
Sure.
aloud, so I learned them by reading. Um, I included them because those philosophers have a lot of faults that I feel like it's hard to expound directly from their words, but I still found the idea of the the psychological aspect of debt being the thing that like stresses people out, and then the stress being something that kills you as the most compelling thing about debt as a concept in this game, because there's a dual meaning um, in that you owe someone something, and also the concept of sleep debt, which I also learned in my undergraduate studies. It's not real. You can't fully pay it back. I make it clear in the game that sleep debt isn't something you can fully pay back. And it's a common misconception, right? Like people feel better after they rest more, but there's still damage being done. So I thought like all of this could get swirled into the end if I make my own sort of treatise on what I think about debt and debt to yourself specifically. Because the player can read what I say and not necessarily take it as gospel, um, just because I happen to be quoting some people. And if they had like a really bad time with their 7 days, they could be like, well, I don't really believe this. They can move on. But if they had like a better time, they could like maybe appreciate these things with a fresher set of eyes, I would say. Like the biggest experiment of this game to me was definitely trying to like wanting really badly to say something uh impactful and not wanting to get lost in the weeds when I had really simple mechanics and stuff to work with.
Um, you know, this is I love to talk about it because it was one of the most impactful poems I've ever read. But Robert Frost has a poem called Birches. And I was never really like a Robert Frost fan until college. I had one professor who was like obsessed with him. And so I was in a poetry workshop, and that was like a quarter of our reading was just Robert Frost. And I didn't get it at first because I was like, oh, whatever, it's Robert Frost. We all two roads diverge in a word, whatever. But I read Birches and it shocked me because he's doing this like long extended metaphor about so birches when they get cold will start to bend over because they're like the wood just isn't strong enough to kind of handle that stress. And he does this whole extended metaphor about how it looks like someone has like come and pulled down all the birches and they're trying to like ride it up like a kind of flight. And it's this bizarre little metaphor, and like halfway through the poem he drops this absolute like crazy banger of a line where he just goes, I think Earth is the perfect place for love. And it's the kind of line that it's like, it's almost too maudlin. It's almost like ingratiatingly sincere, but it's like, but you've done so much to kind of earn that moment for people to take it at face value. And that was what I felt at the end of the game when I came to that page, just that moment of like, wow, it was so shocking to like read through all the things that could happen on day 7 and day 8 and like have this moment where it's like you get to the end and go, God, was it worth it to have this extra day of the week? Like, I don't know, it was just so interesting. That was like a huge star for me, was getting to that point and go, and like I love an introductory quote in front of a game. And so that was like a huge reason why I put mine at the front, was just like, this is a big inspiration for me. But it was like so different coming to the end of yours and going, wow, this is a game that's really saying something. Like, fuck. I just like I gotta tell you, or all the people here in the audience, if you're listening, it is truly worth it. Like everything in this game is very cool, but it's so cool to get to page 26.
It
Because it
truly is
also
awesome.
like there's this lovely like 4 little paragraphs, and then it ends with this is the last page, which is like it's helpful because there are some like post like optional pages after that, but like kind of thematically it hits in a different way that is so it did bring a smile to my face when I was reading.
Thank you so much. I was actually a little insecure about having something so what appeared long-winded uh, at the end of a very neat sort of uh, format of back-to-back sentences. But I got encouraged that it was good to add, not necessarily because of the length being too big or too small, but because it's a book. And I think the book aspect is something that I also really liked designing around because I figured whether or not people would make it to the 8th day, like they would make that decision. Most people would make that decision after the 7th day. So
Sure.
that's I'm so glad. I'm just so glad. Yeah. God, you already kind of covered some of mine about, I suppose, the decision to go for the suits as opposed to a tarot deck? Because I had thoughts in reading that, like, wow, there could be a time and place for those specific suits as opposed to maybe the major arcana, in which I feel like that is ultimately so many prompts
Sure.
that unless you want to expound on it, I don't need to ask that again.
Well, I think, and this could be a half question, because we have already talked about it a little bit, but like kind of capping it off, that is one of the questions I ran into. Is it's like I knew I wanted to split the night like this, so it's like it would be interesting to have a tarot game that you're just playing with the minor arcana,
Yeah,
and so then the question is like, do I want to like add the major arcana, and what does that look like? And I eventually ended on like I think there's enough going on with like having to get the token economy and you're doing all these extra steps that it's like I should make the oracle as straightforward as possible, of like you're not gonna look at it and go like, oh, actually I need to like flip through to a different page, or I need to go find what, like, oh, I accidentally pulled a major or I pulled a major arcana, I need to go to a different index to see what those prompts are. And so it was just one of those that it was like there was a little bit of practicality there in making the choice. There was a little bit of kind of the mechanical reasons for picking, and I think like at the end of the day it's also like I was super inspired by those two games, and they both use a regular playing deck.
absolutely.
There's always
And
second,
why I
there's always
chose
a
the
second
specific,
edition. You know what I'm saying?
exactly,
Hey,
and
absolutely.
why I choose those specific suits for each phase of the night. I kind of had a little joke for each one of them, but it's like the evening is clubs because you're like going out to the clubs, and
Yeah,
like it's just silly stuff like that. Where I eventually came up with a reason why each phase should be what suit, but I mean I could have done them in any order, I think, and come up with something.
absolutely. Then I guess I have a smaller question that can feed into the other
Sure.
half. In that I always love seeing media media touchstones being listed in the games when authors are talking about what they write. And I think the only thing that I wasn't immediately familiar with is If Then, which I believe is that a musical?
Yes.
Okay, I want to know
Yes, it
more
is a
about it.
musical. So okay, all these touchstones, I actually want to go through this list because really quick, because
Absolutely,
it's
absolutely.
things that I love. Because of Winn Dixie and The Tale of Despero, they're both works by Kate DiCamillo, and I think that like what's lovely about her work, and it's something you really see in Because of Winn Dixie, is like Kate DiCamillo has a really strong sense of how to like introduce audiences to melancholy that may have a tinge of sadness, but there's also so much like love, and there's so much nostalgia that's wrapped in it. That's why it's melancholy and not just sadness. And I think she does such a good job with that. And so she's always been a huge inspiration, but definitely specifically for this game. Um, Tales of the City, I love the TV show. I actually never read Tales of the City until this year. I definitely recommend it to everyone. It's one of those like books that started out as a newspaper column that got turned into a book. And I think like you can see the thematic linking because it's one of those stories that it's not necessarily one main character, but you're kind of seeing all these people who live in one apartment block. Um, and you're getting little bits of their stories, so you're kind of getting that. Sense8 is a similar story where it's like you're traveling across all these different people who have different lives that are kind of thematically connected to each other. um Practical Magic by Alice Hoffman, of course, turned into a very popular music with Nicole Kidman and Sandra Bullock. But the Practical Magic book is one of the most beautiful examples of American magical realism that I think exists. It really plays with the idea of southern turns of phrases as an expression of magic. And so like I think it takes the lens of magical realism and applies it in a uniquely American way that I find really compelling. And making sense of maps, I cannot recommend it enough. It's a TED Ed talk that I think it's like maybe 20 minutes long. It's this German guy who came to the US, and he was, or maybe it was England, and he was so interested in like maps, and that's like eventually where he was working, was creating a new map for this really ridiculous metro and bus system, that it's like there's all these weird stops, there's all these schedules, and it's how do you condense all of that into, the really classic subway map kind of thing. And it's just a really interesting talk, but it's also like more broadly about kind of how we think of maps and what information they're actually giving us. And I really wanted to call this one out specifically because Aris is really sweet. When I published this book through Zine.Club, he was like one of the first people that I sent a copy to, because I was like, I want you to know that this was like a very inspirational TED talk. I know it happened like 15 years ago, but I've watched it so many times. And he sent me back this like really lovely email about how he's now back in Germany, and he's like wants to introduce his like gaming club to my game, and he was very sweet. He was very lovely. He will like does an escape room company now, but very cool.
So
Wanted to
cool.
shout him out. If Then is a lovely, lovely musical set in New York City, where a woman is coming back to town after being gone for a couple of years, and she has two friends. One is a woman and one is a man. They're both just very different people. And the concept, like the first time you see the beginning of the musical, she's flying in, and one of her friends picks her up from the airport, and we start to go on the story of how her life goes because she was picked up by this friend at the airport. And then it rewinds back to the beginning of the musical, and she's picked up by the other friend who was available that day to pick her up. And so the musical is switching back and forth between these two timelines, where it's like that one choice of having one friend pick you up over the other, and how her life is diverging from that point. And it was a musical I listened to all the time when I was working on this game, because I thought about the prompts in that way, because I wanted each prompt to be kind of thematically linked to each other. I was thinking of it of like, each time people play this game, even if they're replaying it, if they make even one different choice, the amount of cascading difference between play sessions is huge. Because even if you pick every single prompt exactly the same, the way you did last time, they're going to happen in different orders. You're going to have different characters introduced. You may even be in a different city. It's all about like, and that's kind of what the musical is about. It's about making choices and the consequences. Like, we're living in the reality of those choices. And so that's why I picked If Then as a reference, is really because I was listening to it constantly while I was writing this game. It's really lovely. Idina Menzel is the main character in the original production. So it's really fun.
This is going to be the last question, Artie, for you before we hit our final three.
Sure.
But Keegan does need to know, while you're on this topic, what did you think about the Tales of the City remake? Because apparently they have to know right now.
I mean, production values incredible. I thought it was like very lovely shot. I think that it was a show made by Netflix. I definitely didn't love it as much, but it's still good. I think like it's tough because it's like two of the things, you can look at two of my touchstones and like Sense8 and the remake of Tales of the City were both done by Netflix. And I think there's a lot of discussion to have about how like Netflix kind of originally handles queer stories and how they do in the aftermath. Like the fact that Sense8 doesn't exist anywhere anymore because it was taken off Netflix. It's like there's a lot to talk about there. Actually, I don't even know if Tales of the City is still on Netflix. And
No, it should
so
go either.
I do have some feelings about it, but we don't have to say that where I'm being recorded in public.
Absolutely not. I did go to high school and was good friends with the cop on Sense8, who we just called BJ, but Brian J. Smith and his fancy modern whatever. It was also really funny. I was just Googling it to drop a link to who he was in the chat. And I didn't realize he didn't come out till 2019 because in high school we all knew.
Oh my god.
But was a really good friend. The last time I saw him, before I saw him in a major like TV show, he was standing on his front porch in the pajamas that he had been wearing since he was in kindergarten, super skinny, like whatever. And again, we all knew he was gay. And the next time I saw him, he was a ripped lieutenant in Stargate Universe railing a girl in a closet. It took me half the episode to be like, where do I know this person from?
Totally.
Because of mostly the muscle content, just in how ripped BJ got. But yeah, Stargate Universe was excellent. Also stolen from us in so many ways. But yeah, Arthur, one last question.
Absolutely. Day 6 was my favorite day out of the entire game. And I think the thing that was so arresting about it was the line between reality and surreality is so thin. You read the surreal prompt for day 6 and it's like it almost feels so painfully grounded that it's like maybe we switch it, but like the fact that it isn't switched I think speaks so strongly. I'm like in this game it feels like you're pulling so many levers with that, like the unreality, the kind of Escher-ness of it. And I think you can definitely relate some of that to like sleep deprivation, but I'm also just like, what was, I guess, like, how did you find that balancing act of like when did you know it's like, okay, it's time to finally like really let loose and like rip the band-aid off into something weird, or that kind of thing? Because you do have that lead up, I think, with like day 4 and 5, but I think day 6 is really just kind of the like the hardest hitting day so far.
Absolutely. So 6 and 7 by extension were some of my favorite days to write. I only knew coming in on a bit of an overview that I wanted the progression to be very obvious after day 3, because realistically you have people that can not healthily, mind you, get through a 48-hour period and be like, I did it. I'm running on adrenaline,
Sure.
whatever they run on to get to that point. And while looking into like, how do I do this? I actually found a lot of inspiration from like the 7-point structure of a story, which is like just a less popular, not an exact iteration, but a version of the 3-act story that we all know in our general literature analysis of like beginning, climax, resolution. Where in a 7-act, the way to build tension is to make multiple pinch points, where after like a buildup of tension building events in the story, I'm summarizing this a little briefly. The last pinch point has to bring about a major resolution, essentially. So that it like day 6 was definitely the wind up before a big kick, because I tried to put in like as many literary principles essentially as I could without explicitly calling it a type of story that you read with no input from yourself. So a lot of my like format bending ideas came in day 6 and 7 from like flashes in the pan and reading things like Mad Libs and thinking like, wouldn't it be weird if I like made a sort of maze? Like if I was awake for this song, I would start like losing sense of like the confines of my room. Like I would be expending as little energy as possible, but then I had to think like, no, this needs to be more universalized. So uh, that gave it a sort of tragic purpose to be like, okay, I need to honor the like the fact that the mundane aspect is still gonna feel a little uh scary and surreal because you're still doing a lot to yourself. And a fun fact for people that I don't know if I actually put on the world record for longest time a person has stayed awake, it's at least 11 days. It's 11 days or more, but it uh, is nothing that I think could ever be replicated while necessarily staying completely sane. And I understand that like there are aspects of insanity that this game delves into specifically because sleep deprivation just does that. Those are just symptoms. I try to keep it as normal as possible to explain that like you will succumb to your mind because this is what you're doing to yourself.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, let's dive into our final questions. These are 3 questions we ask everybody at the end of an episode of Now You've Zine It. And the first one is, what's one small thing that stood out to you from the person's work? The intent here is like an image, a phrase, a question, something incredibly small that you were just surprised or delighted by in the other person's work. Amir, why don't you go first?
My instinct is just to say the kings because that's, from what I've portrayed of myself, that's the kind of thing that kind of draws me in. I kind of like the kings in the deck being seated as this kind of monstrous force as opposed to the rest of the deck, which have their own, like not necessarily unmonstrous qualities, but are definitely more approachable, less fear-inducing. But I like that kind of tension in the game, so I thought the Kings were very well written.
Thank you. My answer was actually almost turned into a question, but we don't have time. I loved how the body keeps the score, haunts the game like an omen. It just is like it's that it's almost like the bell tolling in the background of like every time you read it, it cuts so clearly through the text because it's like just a reminder, here's the theme. And it does it so well and so succinctly. I think it was like a really good utilization of that phrase that really kind of hit home what you were doing thematically.
It's one of my favorite phrases. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Artie, let's start with you this time. What's one thing that would have been different if you had created 8th Day of the Week?
I think that if I did 8th day of the week, I think that I think I might have spent a little, a couple pages or so, kind of like having you describe the space that you're in. It's such an internalized game, but there are these prompts that, like, you're walking in a spiral until you light a fire under your feet. It's like, I wonder, like, what's the room that's happening? And so having a moment, because it's like it's different if you're inside of an office building or you're in your apartment. I think it could be interesting to kind of play around with like
Absolutely.
the space outside of your head instead of just what's in your head.
Yeah. And it's absolutely a difficulty, not necessarily a limitation, but just like a difficulty I had with wanting to describe. Uh, Also, I didn't do a lot of playtesting before or during publishing. That was
Sure.
probably the thing I could have learned to do the most because I've gotten feedback post-publishing that actually echoes this. So of course, second edition, it gives me something to
There
chew
you
on
go.
that I really, really would have wanted to ask for. So thank you. Um, this is actually really hard for me because I don't want, likewise, I maybe hesitate to see like where I would put myself in.
Hmm.
I I think the flow of the game is like pretty easy to follow, and I'm just gonna make sure I'm saying this right. I think the gameplay section may have benefited from being called something a little more introductory, unless it was
Sure.
because it may just be a matter of fonts being similar for all of the sub categories. But I likewise I forgot that D4s were necessary until the moment of the light was brought up, and I had to like scroll up to be like, I don't actually. I thought I needed the suits, and then they just took like the scroll up to scroll down thing that happens when you have the how to play in the very
Totally.
top, and then most of the content around like what to do with the suits, which that's the bulk. But
Sure.
that's the only thing that I had in my mind.
Nada, last question is, what's something that you would have never thought to include if you had created this game that was just truly kind of surprising for you?
Hmm, that's a good one. Now I wish I had these pre-planned because you're going to see me think in real time.
That is totally fine.
Um,
I thought we dropped him over to you. I apologize if we didn't.
it's okay. I did see them in the other videos, which should also check out, by the way. If I
We can pass over to Artie for a second to let you have a moment to think about it if you want.
That would be great
Awesome, yeah.
if you had something.
Arthur.
Mine is really easy because it shocked me. And we kind of already touched on this. In day 6, you do have this, in the surreal side, you do have this really interesting format change. And it's like, I totally got the reference to Mad Libs, but like, it, it's like you have this game where all this wild stuff is happening and it's very much in a box, and then you hit this page and it's like I felt the panic I would feel if I were very tired looking at something I like could not unwind in my brain, and not in a bad way. I think it was like it was just a very like natural reaction to like, oh yeah, there's like other modes of expressing myself that like it just kind of hit
Scary.
in a way that was like it was. And having the like, okay, we're going to do this one time and then we're going to do it again with the same answers is just like it it's a very beautifully done break from format, and I think
Thank
that
you.
it's really fun.
I'm really glad that that did hit everything that I wanted it to hit. Um, so every time someone says something to that effect to me, I'm just like, yes. Okay. Um, Something that this could maybe like come off as slight inexperience, that's fine. I'm fine to do that. Is probably the layered in how to sections with how um, conversational it seemed. Or sorry, what I meant to say is examples of play. The examples of play
Oh
that are
sure.
threaded into I confuse myself, which that's okay. I'm trying to read a lot. Um, and I'm bad at multitasking. So this is why development takes forever. I really like how the dialogue being written out for these people's like my question, if I had to ask, is like, was this from a play session of like first edition or something? This
Um,
feels like, even though they're not giving me the beat for beat, it's like, okay, this sort of grounds the concepts down to a level where me just reading the game, I can sit across someone and get to this for the first time, uh, and feel as confident or as trepidatious as these people do. So I wouldn't
um,
have done that.
Jasper, Aaron, and Shelby are three of my actual real life best friends.
Wow.
When I wrote the second edition, I sent it ahead to a couple of people. Obviously, to Wes, who played it with their partner Bran, and it was lovely getting a picture of all their little like candles they lit up, and a couple other people. But I wasn't there to experience it. I wasn't taking notes. It was really just like from like they kind of gave me a little rundown of their experience, and I just like used that to kind of gauge how the second edition was going. But as we were getting like I had kind of sent off the majority of the manuscript to Luna, and I just like I knew I wanted play examples to kind of help reinforce some of these things, but I hadn't actually done it. And so I got my three friends together with me, and we played an actual like game of the second edition, and I took notes the entire night, and I had a huge stack of flashcards that I took home with me that was our entire game. And so as I was writing, I was just like I definitely chose the examples from the game that I thought would be best for the play examples, but it was also like I want to be so true about what my friends said in the moment, because I'm like this game is so personable. It's like I want those quotes to feel so bombastically real because they are the things that my friend said. Like the thing about the sex hotel named Spunk was honest hand to God,
That
my
was so
friend
funny.
Aaron talking about this weird hotel that's near where we live. And
That's
so
gold.
I just yeah, that those were real playtests that I did with my friends, and all of those examples are very real.
I think it's for the better.
Yeah.
Awesome. This was great. It's a thrill as always. Like I love like this. It's really funny. Somebody was like, such a great concept. I'm like, yeah, us getting on and letting other people talk about how smart and good they design things, and I just get to sit here and watch. It's great. Also, there have been people telegraphing a fight scene between y'all and chat over the last little bit.
Oh,
But
nice.
you just watch that later. No, it's been so great. You can find both of these games over on Plus One if you want to help support other amazing games like this getting made. You can go to RPGZine.Club. If you're watching this now, you sign up now for the whole year. Whole year Zine Club coming your way. If you're watching this later, we'll also have released in the new year a new support level of Zine Club. It helps make everything we do here at Plus One a little bit more possible, in addition to helping support great emerging creators. And so, if you want to help support everything we do here, heading over to RPGZine.Club is a great way to do that. But anytime you buy a game off of our site, you're directly supporting the creators who made it. But outside of these two great games, people want to find you, follow your work, find out more about what you're up to. Where is the best place for them to do that? Arthur, where's the best place for people to come follow you?
Absolute best place is going to be Blue Sky. That's werewolf.bluesky.social. Where is in the question, wolf is in the animal.
There we go. Awesome. And Nada, how about you?
Well, everyone can pretty much exclusively find me on Blue Sky because I can't say this legally. Uh, Tall Rowlet at bluesky.social. Where I'm not producing a lot, but if you like, mutual aid fundraisers and political commentary.
There we go.
that's pretty much it for now.
And life isn't about output, no matter how much it might make me feel good and flood little endorphins into my brain. And so, we are going to be off for the next few weeks. We do have coming up tomorrow, I believe, another Immaculate Misconception. Which is this stream is titled. It shouldn't be. That's not what we're doing right now. But apparently, the title I typed in didn't kick through. Quinn will fix all that later. Oh, great! My entire screen just went fuzzy. I have no idea what's going to happen or how I'm going to end this at all. It's great.
Looks okay so far.
Oh man, that's fun. All right. So in addition to that, if you want to check out anything we do, you can follow us at +1EXP on any social media platform. If you are interested in getting your game published through Zine Club or talking to us about that, it's a great way to reach out and a great time to reach out now about 2027, because that's how far out we are planning right now. I'm probably just gonna have to turn off my entire computer in a moment because I really have no idea how I'm gonna get this thing to end. Yep, it's still all just fuzzy. I spent the last 2 weeks switching things around on this computer, and it's still not working right. Oh, it came back. It's back. All right. We'll see what happens here in just a second. I think after Immaculate Misconceptions that's it for us for the year. Until the end of the day today, there's also 10% off any order that you place on +1. It's just going to automatically happen. And you go on. If you want to check out this month's Zine Club releases, that's Burrow Tales and the Pine Tar of Claus Manor, the next expansion for our Wassailing of Claus Manor series that won an Ennie a couple of years ago. This one is absolutely chock-a-block full of amazing things, including some design things, some design language around something that Mike is calling Gate, which is kind of a reworked version of Cats. So if you're into the design scene and you want something that's a little bit better than Cats to kind of intro your game to people and talk about some of the individual pillars that it uses, check out what's Mike's talking about in Gate also too with that. Until that's
real quick,
go ahead.
Hearing from Keegan, there are other streams happening before the end of the year. Ones that you are
I'm
into.
in one tomorrow. Hopefully not tomorrow. It's in 2 days.
There's one on. There's a Christmas stream on the 19th.
Back on Friday for Fanta. Sorry, I was dealing with the fact that my entire world turned into a thing of snow for a minute. We've got our Fanta stream live on Friday, which Keegan has been threatening to do for years, and we're actually going to make happen. So if you want to follow any of that at +1EXP on any of the social media platforms, that was the weirdest, vampiest, most frantic closing I've ever done on a stream. This has been Now You've Zine It with Artie and Amir, and now you've zine us, and now you don't. Bye, everybody.